Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino. And today I have a special guest. His name is Keegan. He is the founder and the chief vision officer of MindfulMEDS, a premium supplement company that revolutionizing mental health and personal growth in Canada. Keegan's journey is nothing short of inspiring. He went from battling a 9-year alcohol addiction that almost took his life. As a result of his addiction, depression and anxiety took over before the transformation began. Keegan transformed his life with the incredible power of mushrooms and natural supplementation. Now his own mission to help others do the same. So, welcome to the show. Happy to have you here. And definitely, I love that idea of just knowing that after 9 years you were able to overcome that with doing something specific and something special. And I want to dive into that. Before we get there, though, tell me a little bit about your upbringing and where you're originally from.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for allowing me to come on here and share this story. My intention is to really help some people. I've learned a ton over the last decade about mental health, and really, it's led me to the work that I do today. But so I'm chatting with you from Calgary, on the western part of Canada, and I'm just at my kitchen table, man. And yeah, I guess what was the second part of the question?
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
where you're from.
How was your upbringing? How was that for you? What was your upbringing? Because you
Sure.
always hear the idea of like, when I grow up, I want to be this, I want to be that, right? And so
Yeah.
sometimes that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Life takes different turns, and life happens, and whether it's good or bad, I believe that the journey that we're in, there's a reason for that, and then who we were in the past can determine who we are now, and makes us do the things that we're doing, right?
Totally, man. Yeah, I mean, like all of our stories, it starts in childhood, and mine was this. I guess my first major wound was my dad. My parents separated. I was in grade one. My dad's Irish, so he ended up actually moving back to the UK, and you know, it was an amazing life because I got to spend 10 months with a lot of structure with my mom and my stepdad, who's been such a blessing in my life, my stepdad, for 10 months a year. And then, literally, at the last day of classes from grade two to the end of high school, my mom put us on a plane and we flew out to England and we spent the summers with my dad. And it couldn't have been a polar opposite environment, to go from dinner on the table every night, having, a lot of love and support and structure, and then go into my dad's for the summer and the wheels fall off and you can eat whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. There was just no rules. And in some ways that was a lot of fun, but in other ways, it was complicated because my dad, was an incredible guy. He spent his career building social programs for the underdog, people with depression and anxiety, in the 1990s when this conversation wasn't really, happening. And, but he was never really able to help himself. And so he had a lot of trauma and a lot of wounds that were just kind of buried deep within and really kind of poisoned his system. So that's kind of where it began.
Yeah. No, got it. So that definitely that was impactful too, for you. let's talk about that idea. What I asked earlier too is like,
Yeah,
when you grow up, we have an idea of I want to be a doctor, I want to be a police officer, I want to be this, whatever, right?
sure.
What was it for you?
You know what, man? I That's such a good question. I remember the first job that I ever wanted to. I wanted to become a human rights lawyer.
Hmm.
I was so into I was the guy that beat up the bully in junior high and high school. I guess in some ways always been advocating for the underdog. And for me, that started in grade two. I got diagnosed with a learning disability. And for any kid or any person that's ever been through something like that, man, that carries a big weight. And for me, I buried it deep within and I hid it and I never told anybody until literally a couple of years ago on a podcast. And I basically just freed myself of this. And so I really didn't consider myself to be a very smart guy until I ended up going to post-secondary and learning about business. And then I got fascinated with the entrepreneurship journey.
Hmm.
But really, I wanted to help people, and I didn't know what that was going to be or what that looked like. My dad had his master's in psychology and was building, as I mentioned, social programs for people with depression and addiction. My mom worked, in disability transportation. My stepdad was the CEO of a social services company. And so it's in our blood to help people. And yeah, so maybe that explains a little bit
Yeah,
about
no, for sure. Yeah, no, no, definitely. So let's talk about, obviously, you're in this space where you want to help people, and even you're doing that now. Maybe, indirectly
yeah,
you were not thinking that it's gonna happen. It is happening with what you have to offer for the people. Let's talk about though. There
yeah.
was a journey. There was a process, right? You yourself went through, and battling a 9 year alcohol addiction. So let's talk about that a little bit before you stepped outside of that and say, "Hey, this is not me anymore." Tell me about that.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think we all grow up. If you grow up in a home that is turbulent, you never want to become, that parent that has the addiction. And certainly for me, man, I never, ever, ever saw myself becoming an alcoholic. I don't think any of us have it scripted that we're going to become an addict of any kind. But, truthfully, when I was 23 years old, I was in my third year of university. I was taking business and really flourishing. I loved who I was. I loved the way that I was showing up in the world. And I was proud of myself, and I would not have traded my life with absolutely anybody else. And, I was lucky, man. I was the captain of my high school football team. I was a leader, really my entire life. And I only share this because, what comes next, I just didn't see coming, man. And I made one massive mistake. One night literally changed the trajectory of my life for the next 9 years. And maybe some people here can relate to it. I cheated on my high school girlfriend, university girlfriend. We'd been together for about 4 years. And honestly, man, it ate a hole in my soul.
Hmm.
It really, it was another secret. I didn't want to tell anybody. And so the way that I, kept this thing buried was I started to drink alcohol.
Oh
And
wow, yeah.
really freaking quickly, man, it scaled from a couple drinks in the evening just to get to bed. Next thing you know, after class, I'm heading to the pub with, the kids that um, maybe were also wounded like me, but you know who I'm talking about, that
Yep.
group of kids that maybe you didn't see yourself hanging around, and then the next thing you know, they're
You
your
are.
allies and you're self-destructing together. And honestly, man, I did that for about 150 days in a row. And I actually got a summer job in New York City when I was 23 years old. It was the summer of 2008. And I showed up because I got hired the previous summer when I was kind of this version of me, a much healthier version of me. But by the time I got to New York, I had been drinking for 150 days and I was a full blown addict. and I was hiding it really well. I was managing to mask it with humor and, um, unhealthy other behaviors to kind of mask it, I guess. But truthfully, man, I was broken inside, and I found myself on this roof of a building in New York, 28 stories high, with my feet cocked up off the ground, looking down at the ground, and just a microsecond away from jumping off this building. And my life within 6 months went from the guy that had more potential than almost anybody else that he knew to being the guy that was about to jump off the building.
Yeah. When you think about that and just thinking about that for a second, you said something and it was just that one decision that changed the trajectory of your future, right?
Yeah,
At that moment. And just like anything, I believe that a lot of people are so afraid of just making that one decision, right? And it can go both ways, right? That one decision can change your life for the
sure.
good, or it can
Yeah,
change your life for the bad, or for the worse, not for the bad, for the worse, right?
totally.
And at the end of the day, people are so afraid of making that decision. But sometimes, put yourself in that situation like you did. You put yourself in that situation. I don't think nobody else did it for you. It was just you
Yeah,
deciding and going through that. And then also maybe, like you said, you had it all. You were the captain, you were the leader, you had,
yeah,
all this potential. And
yeah,
then you decided to kind of, take that away from yourself.
yeah,
Yet you were so close of even taking and doing something that, a lot of people might be facing sometimes when they're watching. It's like, how did I get
sure.
out of this? Like, I have this depression, anxiety, nobody cares, nobody
Yeah,
believes me, I'm here all by myself. Although we're so busy with this social world, in reality we're not, right? And so for you, what was that one thing? Because I think this is going to be a huge message for those that might be going through something similar. What was it for you that you decided, you know what? No, I'm not gonna jump off. I mean, yes, I'm literally here, just literally tiptoeing my life away, but I'm not gonna
yeah.
do this. Why?
You know what, man? It was literally the fact that my older sister, the one that I went on the plane with every single summer, she was getting married at the end of August. And when I was on top of the building, this was in late July. So I had to survive 30 days to get to her wedding.
Mm,
And I'll tell you, man, it was a scary because I was at a place where I was just so checked out. I really did not ever see myself ever getting my life back. And I remember showing up in Calgary to go to the wedding, and I was the MC of the wedding. My whole family had no idea, dude, that my life had fallen apart. I had hit it so well. And I think if you're on the receiving end and you're listening to this right now, you know, what I wish I did back then was I wish I told somebody, I wish I reached out to somebody and said, hey, I am struggling because I can tell you what, man, I know that I had great people in my life that would have done anything to help me, but I was carrying so much shame and so much guilt that I really felt like I was going to be judged and that nobody was going to want to be around me anymore. You
mhm.
start to paint these terrible worst case scenarios in your head, especially when you're using drugs and alcohol. You can't even see the best case scenario. So the truth is, man, is I got to my sister's wedding and wildly I met my wife on that night. I met my wife
Mm.
and I still went through 9 years of becoming an addict. In 2016, I ended up being the first guy at the liquor store at 9 o'clock in the morning every single day for a year and a half leading up to this. So, yes, by the way, I've been with my wife now for about 12 years. It took us
Mhm.
4 years to get together after that. And so, but she was with me through the real heart of the addiction and stayed with me. Um, and luckily, today we get to live this incredible life and help people together with our stories. But truthfully, man, um, yeah, maybe there's something there that you want to dive into.
No, yeah, no, definitely. And what you just mentioned, I think is so important, right? I mean, two things. Number one, not only sometimes people are so secluded that don't want to ask for help, and we're afraid to, we're afraid to ask for help, or again, we feel like no one's listening, and on the contrary, that's not the case, right? The second thing is, I
Yeah.
like what you say here. You said one of the biggest lessons I've learned in doing the work that I do is that we all connect not through the good times, but through the pain we've all experienced, right? And I think that kind of leads to what you're doing right now. You went through 9 years of a lot of pain. Luckily, as you said, your now wife then at least was there to support you, which I think that's huge when you have that support system, whether it's a significant other or a friend, someone that can help you with that, and more or less believes in you. Because a lot of times the
Yeah.
challenge that we have here is that sometimes we need somebody else to believe in us, even when we don't believe in ourselves, to be able to
Yeah.
get through that, right?
Totally.
And that's
Totally.
exactly what happened here, right?
Yeah.
So, so
Yeah.
talking about that, let's kind of go fast forward. I mean, you went through a lot of
Yeah.
different things, a lot of different lessons.
Yeah.
First and foremost, how did you get through those 9 years before I dive into what you're doing now?
You know what, man? Like it was you isolate, you hide, you bury yourself in work and I was still functional, but like the truth is, man, is I had lost my light. You know what I mean? I couldn't see any way out. And I remember, being in the hospital. I ended up getting hospitalized and I was losing feeling in my arms and my legs, and I was losing my eyesight. And I was, wildly, man, it didn't scare me because I thought it was actually going to kill me. And I was so still ready for death at that time that, all of these symptoms appeared. I ended up in the hospital. They ran my blood work and came back, and I'll never forget this nurse coming over to me and saying, "Holy shit, I have never seen somebody with blood sugar this high that didn't slip into a coma." I was
Wow.
diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic on that evening. I was hospitalized for days. And during that hospital stay, what the ultimate thing that changed my life, dude, was this moment. I remember my family showing up to the hospital. Elisa, my wife, was so close to leaving. It was the end, man. It was the finish line for her,
Yeah.
and understandably. And I remember being in that hospital bed, and I started to replay my funeral. I started to think about who was going to speak at my wedding, who was going to actually show, not the wedding, sorry, the funeral, who was actually going to show up at my funeral, what was going to be said about my life. And I realized in that moment that I didn't like any of it. And my
Mm.
parents, God bless them, I didn't come from money. We were a very lower middle class family. But my parents spent tens of thousands of dollars to send me to a private rehab facility, and I accepted. And I'll never forget how scary that moment was because, again, you're just constantly replaying the worst case scenario. No one's going to want to talk to me anymore. My friends aren't going to like me anymore. My family's going to think I'm an idiot. All of a sudden, I'm going to wear this label as an alcoholic. Well, guess what I do for a living today? I share the pain and the struggle that I've walked through only because I want to help out the next person. And there is no shame about getting help. And I'll tell you one thing right now, man. If you are an addict or you're someone that suffered from depression and anxiety or any of the major things that plague us, whether that's OCD, PTSD, eating disorders, if you're somebody that's figured out how to create a comeback from that, trust me when I say this, you're somebody I want around me because the odds of you making a comeback from something like this, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The odds aren't good. So the
Mhm.
ones that actually figured out how to get to the other side, man, do they ever inspire me like crazy. And the work that I do today, brother, is really to help the what I consider the underdog. The
Mhm.
people that I relate to the most are the people that have been through some shit.
Yeah.
And I ended up going through this rehab facility where I was it was CEOs and successful entrepreneurs and yeah, there was a professional race car driver there. There's all these people that you never thought would end up being an addict.
Mm.
And the truth is we're all just one decision away from becoming an addict. We're all one traumatic event away from becoming an addict. And so, it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about that community. It taught me a lot about asking for help. it taught me a lot about telling the truth and trying to talk about these secrets that end up in your system, and these secrets end up poisoning you. But the truth is, you know, the pain that we all go through, with one another, this life isn't about the wins.
Mm.
It's not about the big business deal that you did. It's not about that hockey team that you made, or that sporting event, or that meeting where you impressed everybody. Yes, that has elements in life, but I'll tell you what, the biggest lesson that I learned in the past 5, 6, 7 years is I went from the guy that was the chameleon at the business meeting and I could become anybody that you wanted me to be, to the point where I didn't even know who the hell I was,
Mm.
um, to, connecting with people on a level where we talk about the vulnerable pieces, we talk about the pain that we've been through. And the thing that I've learned, when you start sharing this stuff with other people, and they start to feel comfortable to share some of the things that they've been through, man, Caesar, you get this, man. Life isn't easy. All of
Right.
us are going to have these painful, tender moments. And if you haven't bumped into any yet, I hate to tell you, it's coming, because none of us get out of this without going through some shit.
Right.
But the way that we can make it easier is by talking about it and by sharing our journeys. And I hope this just resonates with somebody that just needed
Oh,
to
I,
hear some
I think it is, and there's a lot of lessons there. I mean, and you're definitely you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, it's from pain a purpose is born. I believe that, right? And we go through that, we hear that, and so obviously you went through a lot of stuff, and now you're in this mission of being able to help people through a different type of way, I guess.
Sure.
So let's talk about when did the idea come about mindful meds. When did that come about?
Sure, man. Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't know how I was going to make an impact with this community, but it was always the goal. So I left rehab. I was $71,000 in debt. I'm now a type 1 diabetic battling for my health. I've made all of these mistakes and burnt all these bridges. And we were so poor that my wife couldn't even come and pick me up from the rehab facility, man,
Mm.
because there was a ferry involved. So no matter where you're at listening to this, I promise you, you can get through this and you can get to the other side. So it takes a lot of humility to be able to share stuff like this.
Right.
Um, 3 years after I got out of rehab, 3.5 years later, I'm now healthy again. I've paid off the debt. I've got a business that is alive and well. But now I'm driving to my office, man, and I'm getting panic attacks. I'm literally have such bad anxiety that I was so close to relapsing that I could taste it. I could literally taste it, man. Like I knew it was
Mm.
going to happen. I raised the red flag. I waved it in the air. Called my parents, called my wife, and said, "Hey, we need to have a family meeting. I'm so close to relapsing." And right about that time, man, I got introduced to somebody that's a mycologist, and a mycologist is essentially a mushroom farmer. And I had heard about, the potential of mushrooms becoming something amazing. And but now somebody's walked into my life and actually had the medicine and introduced me to the medicine. And in a very short amount of time, my life started to shift in some incredible ways. I ended up leaving that business. Again, here I am 3.5 years later with a full rebuild. Lost everything again because I walked away from a really toxic work environment, something that was so out of alignment to what I felt was right. And all of a sudden I've got this rebuild ahead of me, and I had some time on my hands and I started researching. This is 2019, man. There was
Mm.
very few people, I do some public speaking events, and I'll always ask this question. Has anybody, was anybody microdosing in 2019, 2020? And if there's a room of 1,000 people, only maybe 5 or 10 people put their hands up. So it was way ahead of its time. I was fascinated with the research. I was fascinated with mushrooms as a medicine. And, I ended up putting together the first non-publicly traded study ever done in Canada on microdosing. And truthfully, man, the results of the study were enough to make your jaw hit the floor. We had somebody come forward at the end that had already planned her suicide, what she was going to be wearing, the day that she was
Wow.
going to do it. And this little study from just little me, man, by putting this together, saved someone's life. And, I can't tell you, man, how good that made me feel. And all I wanted to do was continue that. And so I took a massive risk. Dude, I went from a 4,000 square foot downtown Calgary office to working from my house, building a mushroom company when my own family and friends thought this was the craziest freaking thing they'd ever heard in their entire lives.
Hmm.
But I knew I had to move it forward. And here we are 5 years later. We develop products that are the safest, the most consistent, and the highest vibrational frequency mushrooms medicine that you can find anywhere in the world today. We work with people that are suffering from all the major things: depression, anxiety, PTSD, OCD, eating disorders, panic disorders, you name it, man.
Yeah.
That really sums up
Yeah,
almost
for
all
sure.
of us,
Yeah.
people with addiction. But now on the other side of it, we also work with the creatives. Now we're working with the professional athletes and the C-suite executives. So no matter where you're at on your journey, I think one of the greatest biohacks in the world today is being able to use mushrooms with intention, use mushrooms with a very educated understanding as how it's going to work on your system. A lot of the work that we do, Caesar, is we help people get off the anti-anxiety medication, get off of the SSRIs, and safely transition to something that's completely natural and far less addictive, far less harmful on the body. And so, I know for you, man, we only got 35 minutes to chat because it's kind of the sweet spot for your community. So I'm kind of rushing, and there's bits and pieces here that are so freaking important, but at
Yeah.
the same time, maybe we just do a starter, and if you're open to it, I'll come back and I'll really share the science and the data and the 25,000 people that we have served in Canada and share with you what I've learned.
Yeah, no,
And
I definitely
yeah,
want to do that. I think it would be good for us to have a follow-up conversation on that. Definitely wanted to ask a few things, but let's schedule that because I think it's important to know that.
yeah,
Here's the one thing that I'm sure many people might be asking, right?
yeah,
Which, it's just society, and I'm sure you've come across this before. You know, the world is just really say, hey, it's safer to go to the doctor and get medicine, right? Medicine that is not processed, is not that is processed, that is not natural, right? Whereas no, don't do mushrooms or do drugs because they're gonna see that as being a drug, like marijuana or weed, whatever the case may be. Like they put that in that category, right?
really.
How do you like how do you differentiate and tell people like really this is much safer than those pills that they're giving you? Because I believe and I'm sure you're on the same page on this, is that when you go to the doctor and they give you medicine, they're giving you enough medicine to where you're on it for life, like you're gonna rely on that for life, right?
Yeah,
You run out, you gotta go back and do that. Is the biggest money making industry in the world, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
hence why they do it like that versus going through something more natural that even if you're in it for life, that it's helping your system is a much better. So let's talk about that because I'm sure you have a lot to share in terms of that.
Yeah, well, first of all, man, like if you're listening to this and you're going, "What a bunch of baloney this is," I get it. I understand. In 1970s, Richard Nixon came in and did this war on drugs. So if you're my mom's age or my dad's age, he's passed now, but if you're in that, category where you're in your mid 60s or older, this is a lot for you to understand but I'll tell you this. Three things that I want to share here. If you interviewed a scientist that was involved in working in science in the 1970s, and you asked any of them today what the biggest unfortunate misstep that happened in science might have been, almost all of them will say that there was 3,000 clinical studies that had already been done on psychedelics, particularly mushrooms, in the 1970s. And all of that work ended up being, thrown off the table. War on drugs started, and then things got twisted. So my point is I understand. I totally get it. It's been a confusing, when it comes to this stuff, it can be quite confusing. So I'll start there. Now the second piece is the doctors and the medicine. I'm a type 1 diabetic. And so white collar conventional medicine saved my life. And if it's been helpful for you, fantastic. But I'll tell you, in my journey, 5 years on this, working with the mushrooms and this medicine, such a big part of the work that we do is helping people safely get off of these SSRIs. And the feedback that I get on a daily basis, it sounds something like this. I got put on one of these SSRIs when I was in high school because I had a baby and I ended up with some postpartum depression. And here I am 30 years later, still on this same freaking SSRI, and I'm trapped on it, and my emotions are numb. I've lost the connection with my family. And, maybe that resonates with you. So let me just start there. There's no judgment here. I totally get it. If it's been helpful for you, I understand. But just know this is what I want to leave you with. The biggest drug study that has ever been done in the world was done by this guy named Professor David Nutt. And he's the head of the Pharmacological Society at the Imperial College of London. So we're talking an Ivy League school in the UK. And this drug study was looking at the top kind of 15 most dangerous drugs in the world. And they were looking for the damage that it did to your own individual body when you consumed it. And they were looking at the damage that it did to the community around you. Now, this study was done in, like I said, in Europe, but they replicated it in North America and they got identical results.
Mm.
So I'll ask you this, just when it comes to safety, because that word came up and I want to just share this, because this is something that everybody should know. What do you think the number one most dangerous drug in the world is? Take a
I would,
guess.
I would probably say if we're talking about things that you consume, like I would say probably over-the-counter medicine, like some of the basic, headache pills or things like that, like Advil, Tylenol. I would say that.
Right. So you're close. It's alcohol.
Mm.
Okay. The number one most dangerous drug in the world for your own body and the people around you is alcohol. 3 million people a year globally die from alcohol-related illness.
Wow.
Okay. So let's get that out there, right? It's everywhere. It's accessible. It's on every freaking ad that you see when you watch the baseball game. It's available everywhere. 24 hours, it can get delivered to your house, but it's the most harmful. Think about that just for a moment. Now, as the list goes down, they study 15 of the drugs. So then it's like cocaine, crack cocaine, methamphetamines, cannabis is on there.
Hmm.
Caffeine is on this list. And at number 0, the very last place, the safest drug in the entire world. And I'm only saying drug here because it is framed that way in the study. We say medicine is mushrooms. Not one person in the history of time has ever overdosed on mushrooms. They are by far the absolute safest drug in the entire world. So I think that's just a really great starting point for our conversation, Caesar.
Yeah.
And if you're open to it, brother, I'd love to come back and I'll share a bit more science with you guys. I'll share some of the other data that I know. And I think at the end of it, you can then make a decision to where you stand on it all. But I think the most important thing is just get educated. Just go and understand it. Look at the science. You don't have to listen to me. Look at the science. That's the only way that we can all agree is with the clinical data and the clinical studies that have been done.
Right.
And this can't be debated anymore. I
Yeah.
promise you in the next 5 years, psilocybin and microdosing will be in every single medicine cabinet all across North America and probably globally. The same way that we have Advil. And, we won't get into that today, but we all know
Yeah.
what's come out recently about this.
Right.
But I
For
thought
sure.
that might be a good place to start, brother.
I definitely agree with that. I definitely think that we definitely want to have another shot at this and go over all of the other things, because I think it's a really good conversation. And again, just kind of looking and thinking about what that really means, and how to, more than anything, is it accepted? And that's another thing that I know might be a question. Can is this something that I can get anywhere to help me, or how do I utilize that for things and addictions that I'm going through? And I think that's very important for us to kind of connect. So tell me, for now,
Yeah,
how can people connect with you, get a hold of you, and find out more about the things that we're talking about? Obviously, we definitely got to do one show again, but for
for
now, how
sure.
can they connect with you?
Thank you, man. So our website is mindfulmeds.io. And all of our products are there. If you're interested in understanding how mushrooms work, we have the most comprehensive microdosing guide that I believe is available anywhere in the world. Our team put almost 500 hours into building this document well before ChatGPT, and we give it away for free. It's
Mm.
62 pages long. The drug study that I just mentioned is in the guide. My big thing is this: let's give people all the information that they can consume, and then you just make a decision if it's right for you or not. I'm not going to sell anybody on it, but I will tell you, it is by far the safest drug in the entire world, and it is shifting people's lives in such a positive way that I'm pretty excited about it, if you can't tell, right?
Yeah,
Like,
no, for
it's been
sure.
an incredible journey.
Yeah.
Our Instagram is mindfulmeds_ca. Start there. Start with mindfulmeds.io is the website. Mindfulmeds_ca is our Instagram. And I'd love to connect with you. I offer free coaching calls every Thursday, 15-minute calls to really get to know you, the things that you're going through, and help pair you up with medicine that is going to work for your exact body type, the exact thing that you're going through, and the exact outcomes that you might be looking for. So whether you're somebody suffering with anxiety or depression, or you're an NHL player and you're playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs, we have several active hockey players that uses our medicine. Or maybe you're a C-suite executive. Maybe you're somebody that is just looking for a tool to get to the next level in your career. We make products for that as well. Um, and we're really proud of what we've built here, man. We've got, well over 1.5 million microdoses in the marketplace in Canada alone. In the history of our business, I think we've only ever done one or two returns in the history of our business.
Wow.
So we're
Huge.
really, really proud of the medicine that we serve. And but we lead with education. And that's kind of all I want to do is help people open their eyes to a few things, and then they can make decisions from there.
Yeah, for sure. Is the medicine based on the treatment, or the person's condition, like in terms of the time that you will take that, or how much you take? Obviously not understanding much of that, but is that specific to the person, whatever you're trying to
It is, man.
accomplish?
And,
Okay.
and one of the most interesting things about mushrooms is, the sweet spot for me when it comes to the active ingredients. And if we had a group of 20 or 30 people in front of us, almost all of us would need to approach this ever so slightly differently. So we work with people with wherever they're at, with whatever they're looking for. And, none of us are doctors, but the truth is, at this stage, we've worked with so many people, we've done our research, and we can make suggestions based on what we've learned. And so yeah, we tailor a package based on you as an individual.
Awesome. Well, no, definitely, this is a good conversation. I think this is a good placeholder for us to come back and learn more about it, and actually get into the science of it and a lot of the benefits. And I think it would be also be good for us to, kind of talk about some of testimonials, and some of the things that people have experienced getting on this, and how fast they saw some results. I think that's huge, because I think that definitely, when you can provide that, as you said, the data and the information to the people, now you can go out and make your own decision based on that. So
Well, I love that
definitely.
you brought that up. So in our
Mhm.
microdosing guide, our study that I mentioned at the very start of this, all of the testimonials from the study are available on our website.
Ah,
Look at the reviews underneath all the products. We have hundreds upon hundreds of 5-star reviews. Listen to, you can get some insights from from people with their reviews. And the truth is the reviews aren't for us. The reviews are for people that are curious about it,
Mm-hmm.
because you might just read one that really resonates and you go, oh my God, I can relate to everything that person's going through. And so we encourage people to leave reviews. All the testimonials are in that microdosing guide and the study. It's available for free on our website. So even if you don't anticipate becoming, a client or a customer, you use us as a resource to get educated and do some learning.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. Well, again, thank you again for being here, Keon. You've given us a lot of great information, and definitely want to have you back. Before I let you go, anything else that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it would just be, if you're struggling right now and you're embarrassed and you've got this heavy guilt and shame that is consuming you, and you think no one's going to understand, I promise you that is not true. Reach out. It is not weak to speak. Okay. So do yourself a favor, find that one cousin, that one colleague, that one friend, and share with that one person what it is you're going through. I promise you, all of us know that if somebody reached out to you today and they asked for help, what an honor that would be to receive that call, right? And I truly mean that. So don't be afraid to ask for help. It'll end up being the best thing that you ever did. And man, can I ever relate to those people that need the help?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Thank you again for that. I think that's huge, and thank you for sharing that. And definitely for the rest of you guys, do me a favor, go out and check out his Instagram, go out and go to the website, look at the studies, and we're definitely gonna have him back over here so we can get deep down into the science and all the other stuff that the mushroom has and the benefits. So again, thank you for that, Keon, for being here. And please, for the rest of you guys, please make sure they share this because somebody definitely needs to hear this message and it can impact their lives positively. I'll see you guys in the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything Podcast Show. Thank you.
Brother.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.